Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started. Good luck. What is the function of the reset action in an AWS IoT Events detector model? To clear all input data associated with a detector model. To restart the entire AWS IoT Events service. To return a detector model instance to its initial state. To reevaluate all past messages against the current model. The reset action in an AWS IoT Events detector model is used to return a specific detector model instance to its initial state. This can be useful when you want to restart the event detection process for a particular device or system, clearing any accumulated state information. What does event detection rate refer to in AWS IoT events? The frequency of alarms triggered. The cost of AWS IoT services. The total number of IoT devices connected. The speed at which events are processed. Event detection rate in AWS IoT events refers to the speed at which the system can process incoming events, indicating its ability to detect and respond to events in real time based on defined rules and conditions. What happens when an event is detected in AWS IoT events? The IoT device is immediately shut down. The event is automatically stored in an Amazon S3 bucket. An email is always sent to the system administrator. The detector model evaluates the event and may change state or trigger actions. When an event is detected in AWS IoT events, the detector model evaluates the event against its defined logic. Based on this evaluation, it may change state and/or trigger one or more actions, such as sending a notification or invoking an AWS Lambda function. In AWS IoT events, how are clear timer actions typically used? To erase all historical data associated with a detector model. To remove all scheduled maintenance tasks for IoT devices. To stop and clear a previously set timer. To reset the AWS IoT Events service to its initial state. Clear timer actions in AWS IoT events are typically used to stop and clear a previously set timer. This can be useful when a certain condition is met before the timer expires, or when transitioning to a state where the timer is no longer relevant, preventing unnecessary timer-based actions. Which of the following accurately describes how AWS IoT Events charges for its service? Based on the number of actions triggered by events. Based on the number of IoT devices connected. Based on the number of messages evaluated and detector model instances. Based on the total storage used for historical data. AWS IoT Events pricing is primarily based on the number of messages evaluated and the number of detector model instances in your account. This usage-based pricing model allows costs to scale with your actual utilization of the service. What AWS service can be integrated with AWS IoT Events for data analytics and visualization? AWS IoT Device Defender. Amazon QuickSight. Amazon Kinesis. AWS IoT Core. Amazon Kinesis can be integrated with AWS IoT Events for data analytics and visualization, allowing developers to process and analyze IoT event data in real time. How does AWS IoT Events simplify the implementation of event-driven IoT applications? By abstracting complex event processing logic. By reducing IoT device storage costs. By providing real-time data visualization. By automating device provisioning. AWS IoT Events simplifies event-driven IoT applications by abstracting the complexity of event processing logic, allowing developers to focus on defining event conditions and actions rather than managing intricate event detection mechanisms. What AWS service can be integrated with AWS IoT Events to trigger serverless functions in response to detected events? AWS SQS, AWS API Gateway, AWS RDS, AWS Lambda. AWS Lambda is commonly integrated with AWS IoT Events to execute serverless functions in response to events detected by detector models. In AWS IoT Events, what is the purpose of an on-enter action in a detector model? To determine which state to transition to next. To specify actions to be taken when entering a new state. To define the conditions for leaving the current state. To set up recurring actions while in a state. An on-enter action in an AWS IoT Events detector model specifies the actions that should be taken when the detector enters a new state. This allows you to trigger specific responses or notifications as soon as a state change occurs. Which statement best describes the relationship between inputs and detector models in AWS IoT Events? Detector models generate inputs for IoT devices. A single input can be used by multiple detector models. Inputs directly trigger actions without going through detector models. An input can only be associated with one detector model. In AWS IoT Events, a single input can be used by multiple detector models. This allows different models to interpret and respond to the same incoming data stream in various ways, based on their specific event detection logic. What is the primary function of states in AWS IoT Events? To categorize types of IoT devices. To manage device firmware updates. To visualize historical IoT data. To represent conditions during event processing. States in AWS IoT Events represent different conditions that a detector model can be in during event processing, guiding the flow of actions based on the current state of event inputs. What is the primary purpose of inputs in AWS IoT Events? To manage IoT device lifecycle. To authenticate IoT devices. To monitor network bandwidth. To provide contextual data for event processing. Inputs in AWS IoT Events are used to provide contextual data associated with events, which is crucial for determining the appropriate actions or responses. What is the purpose of the set-timer action in an AWS IoT Events detector model? To limit the total runtime of a detector model instance. To schedule maintenance windows for IoT devices. To set the system clock of the AWS IoT Events service. To start a timer when entering a state or when an event occurs. The set-timer action in an AWS IoT Events detector model is used to start a timer when entering a state or when an event occurs. Timers can be used to trigger state transitions or actions after a specified duration, which is useful for monitoring time-dependent conditions or implementing delays. Which of the following is not a valid state in an AWS IoT Events detector model? Alarm. Normal. Degraded. Transition. In AWS IoT Events, valid states in a detector model represent the condition of your equipment or process, such as normal, degraded, or alarm. Transition is not a valid state, it refers to the movement between states based on events. Which statement accurately describes the scalability of AWS IoT Events? It has a fixed capacity and requires manual scaling. It scales based on the number of IoT devices, not message volume. It can only scale up to a predefined limit set during configuration. It automatically scales to match the rate of incoming messages. AWS IoT Events is designed to automatically scale to match the rate of incoming messages. This means it can handle varying loads without requiring manual intervention, ensuring that your event detection and response capabilities grow with your IoT data volume. What role do variables play in an AWS IoT Events detector model? They represent physical properties of IoT devices like temperature or pressure. They store information that can be used for making decisions in the detector model. They are placeholders for future features that haven't been implemented yet. They define the maximum number of instances allowed for a detector model. Variables in an AWS IoT Events detector model store information that can be used for making decisions within the model. They can hold data such as counters, timestamps, or other values that persist across state transitions, allowing for more complex event detection logic based on historical or cumulative data. In AWS IoT Events, what is the role of alarm actions? To manage device firmware updates. To simulate IoT device behavior in bad weather. To visualize real-time IoT data. To define responses to critical event conditions. Alarm actions define responses to critical event conditions. Which of the following is a valid use case for AWS IoT Events in a smart home context? Streaming live video from security cameras to homeowners' devices. Detecting and responding to a sequence of events indicating a potential water leak. Ordering replacement parts automatically when appliances malfunction. Adjusting the home's architectural design based on occupant behavior. A valid use case for AWS IoT Events in a smart home context is detecting and responding to a sequence of events that might indicate a potential issue, such as a water leak. For example, it could monitor signals from moisture sensors, water flow meters, and pressure sensors, and trigger alerts or shut off the main water valve if a concerning pattern is detected. What is the primary difference between AWS IoT Events and AWS IoT Analytics? AWS IoT Events is for industrial IoT, while AWS IoT Analytics is for consumer IoT. AWS IoT Events is a paid service, while AWS IoT Analytics is free. AWS IoT Events works with real-time data, while AWS IoT Analytics only works with historical data. AWS IoT Events focuses on event detection and response, while AWS IoT Analytics focuses on data analysis and insights. The primary difference is in their focus. AWS IoT Events is designed for event detection and response based on IoT data, triggering actions when specific patterns occur. AWS IoT Analytics, on the other hand, is geared towards analyzing IoT data to derive insights and improve decision-making processes. In AWS IoT Events, what is an event condition used for? To define criteria for triggering actions. To categorize types of IoT devices. To schedule periodic data collection. To create visual representations of event data. An event condition in AWS IoT Events defines the criteria that must be met for an event to trigger specific actions, facilitating automated responses based on predefined rules. What is the purpose of the batchput message API in AWS IoT Events? To send messages to an input to be evaluated against detector models. To delete multiple messages from an input simultaneously. To update the content of existing messages in bulk. To retrieve messages from a specific detector model instance. The batchput message API in AWS IoT Events is used to send messages to an input. These messages are then evaluated against the detector models associated with that input, potentially triggering state changes or actions based on the defined event patterns. In AWS IoT Events, what is the purpose of transition events? To manage device firmware updates. To move between states within a detector model. To categorize types of IoT devices. To visualize historical IoT data. Transition events in AWS IoT Events are used to move between different states within a detector model, enabling developers to define state transitions based on specific event conditions. What role does input attribute mapping play in AWS IoT Events? To manage device firmware updates. To visualize real-time IoT data. To categorize types of IoT devices. To translate event data into actionable insights. Input attribute mapping in AWS IoT Events is used to transform and map incoming event data attributes into a format that detector models can process, facilitating accurate event detection and response. How does AWS IoT Events help in reducing operational costs for IoT applications? By automating event detection and response tasks. By offering discounts on AWS IoT services. By providing unlimited free tier usage. By eliminating the need for IoT device certifications. AWS IoT Events reduces operational costs for IoT applications by automating event detection and response tasks, thereby optimizing resource utilization and improving overall efficiency. Which AWS service can be used to visualize the data processed by AWS IoT Events? AWS IoT Core. Amazon QuickSight. AWS IoT Analytics. Amazon Kinesis Video Streams. Amazon QuickSight can be used to create visualizations and dashboards from the data processed by AWS IoT Events. It allows you to gain insights into your IoT data and monitor trends over time. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.